At the Chankaska Winery north of Mankato, Minnesota, I'm Mark Dorenkamp on Brownfield. Tonight, Graydon Chong will be speaking. He is with Rabobank. What do you have planned to talk about with the group in attendance tonight, Graydon?
We're going through a little bit of what we see on a longer term outlook for growth in Asia and specifically Southeast Asia. I think when we talk about Asia, normally a lot of people focus on the growth in China, and whilst we do see that as a very important factor in the future for growth and demand for ag commodities, we do see Southeast Asia as becoming an increasingly important market to focus on, particularly for US ag producers, as that market not only grows in population but also grows in their affluence, and as incomes rise in that market, we certainly do see some good opportunities to tap into particularly the feed market there, growing animal protein consumption, chicken, poultry, and seafood is going to be really important in that market going forward. And we're likely to see more growth in hog consumption and beef production going forward. So it's certainly that market will certainly become more and more important, particularly from a consumption of feed grains, but also some other economic drivers that we're seeing in that region as well.
You mentioned poultry, and here in Minnesota, avian flu has had a devastating impact. How are other nations looking at the situation here in the U.S. as far as poultry exports?
Look, I think we're certainly monitoring what's happening in the poultry industry here. It's obviously had a very big impact at the moment on supply out of this market. Look, I think the world's just coming to terms with exactly what that means for the global export market at the moment, and we're still kind of waiting to see how long it's going to be for that restocking of that industry, and potentially what that means for prices as well. You know, we are likely to see the prices, or we have already seen prices for eggs, for example, in this market creep a little bit higher, and at the moment we don't think there's going to be a big impact on export prices, but that's still yet to be seen.
Will you talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership at all, and if so, you would think that for American producers that's certainly good news.
It certainly is. I think access to particularly the Southeast Asian market is very, very important, and there are a number of Southeast Asian countries in that TPP. Not only that, but what it means for the region and access potentially into China from the Southeast Asian region as well. So there are some pretty big markets which are involved there. Australia is part of those negotiations, as well as the US and Canada. It obviously is going through a process at the moment, and a lot of the devil is going to be in the detail, so to speak, around which sectors get what sort of tariff reductions and which ones potentially are exempt. So, it's still got a little while to go here, but certainly any trade negotiations will likely be very positive for the ag industry here in the US.
People are here tonight to listen to your insights, but what have you taken away from your tour through Minnesota so far?
Look, we don't get a lot of corn and soybeans grown in Australia, so it's been really good to be able to look at the crops here and see over the last few days just how well crops are doing here in the north of the country. So I flew into Fargo a couple of days ago, and crops all the way down through North and South Dakota have looked pretty good so far, and now into Minnesota we see some very, very good crops. So it's been good to see what crops are doing, what the sentiment on the ground is here from the growers, and see where there's a lot of similarities between some of the issues that we see at the farm gate in Australia and some of the similarities we see here on farm as well.
Graydon, nice to meet you. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much.